We have a very esteemed panel with us of activists and journalists from different countries in the region. हमारे सेशन का नाम है डिजिटल विच हंट्स, हु इज़ द चुड़ैल। जैसे आपको पता है विच हंट्स होती थी पहले ज़्यादातर उन लोगों के ख़िलाफ़, उन ख़वातीन के ख़िलाफ़ हु हेल्ड अनऑर्थोडॉक्स व्यूज़, जो उनकी सोच थी, उनका जो कॉन्डक्ट था, वो मुआशरे के उस वक्त जो नॉर्म्स थे उनके ख़िलाफ़ समझा जाता था। और विच हंट्स यूज्ड टू बी अ वे टू टेम women who were considered to be too rebellious and not in control of patriarchy at that time. We see more or less the same thing happening now, but of course अल्फाज जो हम इस्तेमाल करते हैं अब सिर्फ चुड़ैल नहीं है, उसमें मज़ीद इजाफ़ा हो गया है। आपने सुना होगा लिफाफा, पटवारी, libtards, prostitutes. We have a whole range of terms, very derogatory terms that are used to label people who have views that are considered either unorthodox, which are not aligned with popular narratives, which are considered anti-state, or certain identities which are considered unacceptable in society. इस सब पे हम बात करेंगे और ऑफ कोर्स अब ये ऑनलाइन स्पेसेस, डिजिटल स्पेसेस पे भी इस तरह की टारगेटिंग, इस तरह के अटैक्स आ गए हैं. And we have with us activists and journalists, like I said, from across South Asia to talk about their experiences of handling, of dealing with, of experiencing such digital witch hunts. हमारे साथ हमारी बहुत esteemed anchor persons, journalists हैं from Pakistan. We have Gharidah Farooqi, of course, she needs no introduction. We have Munizae Jahangir, both of them anchor persons, journalists with long experiences in this field, both of whom are subjected to some vicious online trolling. Khas taur pe Gharidah, who bravely manages herself, does her work despite constantly being attacked for her views. We also have guests from across South Asia, like I said. We have Nidhi Razdan. She is known in Pakistan. She has been affiliated with NDTV for a long time and is an anchor person and a journalist. We also have with us Ahmed Tholal. He is from the Maldives. He's a human rights activist and earlier was also part of the Maldives Human Rights Commission. We have with us Damith Chandimal, who's from Sri Lanka. He is from Inform Human Rights Documentation Center. And we have Naznin Munni, who's from Bangladesh. She's a journalist and content editor as well. So the structure of this session is going to be as follows. We're going to start with a 4-5 minute presentation or comment by each of our speakers who are going to tell us a bit about their country context as well as their own personal experience with digital witch hunts. Then we'll move on to certain questions, certain themes that we'll request all our speakers to address. So Nidhi, you are with us. Thank you so much for joining. Why don't we start with you? You have recently spoken up a lot about the kind of abuse and targeting you face for your views, as well as for being a woman and a very popular woman anchor, journalist whose opinion really matters, not just in India but across the world. If you'd like to please speak to us about that. And also, if you're comfortable, a lot of us would like to know about the hostile takeover of NDTV since you've been affiliated with them for such a long time. If you're comfortable, if you can talk a bit about that as well.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Reema, and it's really wonderful to share this platform with all the fantastic speakers here today. I'm so sorry that yet another thing that we have in common between India, Pakistan, and the rest of South Asia is the kind of online harassment so many of us face, particularly women, but I know it's actually gender neutral now. It's something that you face across the board. I think, let me first begin with the Indian context. It's very clear that the online space has become a very active political space in particular since 2014, because the BJP in its campaign really used social media in a big way to try and reach out to a certain demographic. And as more and more people have essentially gone online and have found themselves logging onto spaces like Twitter, etc. We find, like it in other parts of the world, the discourse is very polarized. On Twitter, it is very toxic. I mean, as I speak, there's all kinds of boycotts of Bollywood happening, which is a part of the same
Yeah.
sort of campaign, to target liberal Bollywood, Muslim actors, etc. And journalists, of course, have been caught in the middle of that polarization, especially journalists who are critical of the establishment, or who are basically just doing their jobs. We may not be politically affiliated to any particular party. And I can say, for example, that I myself face vicious trolling from all sides, really. I mean, I face it from the right wing, I face it from Congress trolls, I face it from Aam Aadmi Party trolls. It's very, very abusive. And that's what the discourse has become. But particularly the establishment, I say, because of course they have the resources at their disposal. They have a very well organized IT cell, which operates. And if you say something that they don't like, they you'll find yourself trending online for all the wrong reasons. There was a story that was recently done on how a very shady sort of app called Tech Fog was being used allegedly by the BJP's IT cell to target women journalists in India in particular. I found myself at number 3 on that list. Rana Ayub at number 1, Barkha at number 2, and myself at number 3. And they had just listed out just the sheer volume of hateful tweets against us. It does affect you. You can't say that you're thick-skinned and you look the other way, because it's hurtful, it's nasty, and at the same time, I think you do find mechanisms to try and cope with it. One of them that I have found that helps me, and this is for anybody out there who may face this, is please liberally use the block button. It's there for a reason. It's not a violation of anyone's free speech. They are free to abuse you on their timelines, and you are free to not to have to see it on your timeline. So please be liberal in that. Don't respond to trolls. Don't I mean, you may want to weep, you may want to cry, you may want to scream, but as far as you can, just do not respond to any of that viciousness at all. Surround yourself with supportive people, in terms of family, in terms of friends, in terms of superiors at work that you can talk to. Because I can tell you, and Rana has spoken about this, others have spoken about this, it does take a toll on your mental health as well. So having a good support system around you is very, very important. And please remember that, especially for all women out there, you're not alone. We're all going through this, whether it's my colleagues from Pakistan, my colleagues here in India, and so many other countries. We're in this together. Well, it's not like you're being singled out because you're X person. It is. I mean, I've read about it in Brazil, in other Latin American countries. It's misogynistic, it's vile, but that is the price that, in a sense, we end up paying for being professionals, for being outspoken, and for just doing our job. So we just have to find a way to navigate this nastiness which exists. I'm happy to take your questions on that further. This was just a very basic opening comment that I wanted to make. As far as the question on NDTV is concerned, that is above my pay grade. It is something that is still happening, and has caught all of us by surprise. Hasn't quite happened yet. So let's see where it goes. I wish I had more answers for you.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. That's a great way to start. I mean, it gives us a foundation to move on to other conversations about other country contexts. We might see a lot of similarities, but let's see if there are any differences in the region. I'd like to go to Sri Lanka now, and Damith, you're with us. You have also spoken about this from your own particular context, from your own particular experiences. We often associate online harassment, abuse campaigns against women, but there are, of course, a lot of other, whoever is viewed as more vulnerable is from a marginalized community, be it on the basis of their gender identity, their religion, their ethnicity. They tend to be more vulnerable, and the attacks against them tend to be particularly pernicious and perhaps disproportionate. What is the context like in Sri Lanka, and what has your experience been?
Yes. When it comes to Sri Lanka, I think we are now in a on one hand in a political and economic crisis, and attention of the all the world and also in Sri Lanka has been on lot of issues which has been recently there in Sri Lanka, especially with regards to attacks on human rights defenders, protesters, and so on. So we are kind of in a specific kind of situation, not only limited to uh, digital security and online platforms, but also face a kind of overall situation that human rights defenders and protesters and whoever is against the government is being targeted and sometimes being arrested, harassed. So online is one platform, I would say, that dissent has been repressed in Sri Lanka. But then there are kind of trends I think I see as an activist, also as a researcher in overall for last several years. So I
We
mean,
can come
since
back
you
to him.
mentioned rights exist in Sri Lanka, I mean, I'm much more aware of the kind of threats faced by LGBT activists in Sri Lanka, and we are. I mean, I was a part of a group to do the Sri Lanka's first. I mean, Pride Parade March in Sri Lanka amidst the anti-governmental protest in Colombo. So some of them have been targeted, I mean, both online and also offline. Also, I also work with the journalist networks and human rights defenders network. So, I would basically refer to certain patterns. One pattern is that digital information is used mm, as a way to find information to put the surveillance on the human rights defenders or the journalists. So their digital platforms or the digital devices are sometimes taken as the evidence, or for example, no, before this, one journalist who reported on a possible attack on about Chinese embassy in Sri Lanka was arrested by Sri Lankan authorities. First, he was questioned, and then they let him go. While he was traveling home, on his way home, he was arrested and arrested. Uh, I mean, in an inhuman way, and also then he was taken to his home. All the digital devices like USB pen drives, his laptops, all the devices were also confiscated, and then whatever they were in his. He had two houses, one in Colombo where he used to stay,
Yeah.
and one in Kandy where his family was there. So the digital devices in both houses were confiscated, and the family members were questioned. Those who offered
Yeah.
him the property to rent were questioned. So one trend is this digital devices. The other one is, I think, certain journalists were, especially in North and East, in one case, the journalist was forced to uh, mm, give his password and the banking information. He was questioned about where he got money. So it actually goes beyond the digital platforms and online harassment sometimes.
Yeah.
So the threats that challenges that journalists face are beyond online harassment,
Absolutely.
especially when it comes from the state authorities.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for pointing that out, because we've seen that in Pakistan as well, haven't we? Terrorism charges, sedition charges, contempt of court proceedings, all because of a tweet or a Facebook post. And of course, we've seen this in India as well, some very high profile cases of exactly the same kind of pattern. Let's move to Pakistan now. And I think, Gharidah, I'd like you to take the floor. I mean, a lot of women journalists in Pakistan and journalists generally face online campaigns and trolling. But what happens to you seems to be slightly different because of just the severity and how often it happens and how many people participate in the trends against you, how dirty, abusive, threatening they get. Can you tell us a bit about this, how you cope with it, how it impacts your work? Because it just seems unprecedented, the kind of, in Pakistan's context at least, the kind of hate you get online.
Thank you very much, Reema, Omar, and thank you AGHS and Voicepkdotnet and all the organizers and everybody for arranging this absolutely fantastic conference and for having this conversation. This is very, very, very important. And thanks to all of you, all the dynamic, vibrant students, eager to learn, eager to know. You might have a lot of questions. Why is this happening to women in Pakistan? And perhaps at some times, some of you might have been engaged, or if not you, the people you know, your friends, or the friends of friends, or the circle of friends, or anybody you know might have been engaged in that trolling. I would say कि ये अब सिर्फ एक trolling नहीं रही है. To call it a trolling is to underestimate it. This is violence. This is hate. This is anything, if anything beyond violence could have been translated. This is what is happening to women in Pakistan, and not just to women in Pakistan, but to women in South Asia and to the women in the world. This is the same pattern everywhere. I mean, आप कहीं पर भी दुनिया भर में किसी भी journalist से बात कर लें. Since I'm a journalist and we have this session talking about how the women journalists or the women activists or women working in these fields are targeted. Otherwise, तो आपको हर segment of society में नजर आते हैं. When I first read about this title of the session, Digital Witch Hunts, Who is the Churail? I was really fascinated by this. Do I look like a churail? Why am I painted as a churail in Pakistan? Okay, fine. If you have to paint me as a churail, let it be. I will fight it out. Because that's what women have been doing. Like Reema, Omar just described, that this has a historical perspective. And now, looking at this session composition, it's very heartening for me to see that this session is dominated by women. We have two men from other countries as well. But generally, this session about digital witch hunts, who is the churail, dominated by women, because this is the historical perspective. आप witch hunts के history में जाएं, all the descriptions, all the depictions, be it pictorial, be it verbal, be it in writing, it would show men burning women, men taking women to justice. So when we talk about the witch hunt, when we talk about...
This is the opposite. Actually, what we meant, who is the churail? Who's the churail who's trolling you?
Yeah.
that is what was meant by who is the churail, because it's a witch hunt.
Yes.
So who is the witch?
But we have to first address why are we painted as churails? Why are we painted as something, जैसा कि रीमा ने भी explain किया, doing something unorthodox. So I'll come to that point later. I have been facing, like Nidhi said, from 2014, it has been happening in India. So I have been facing that since 2014, जो sister, ideological sister party है BJP की पाकिस्तान के अंदर, पाकिस्तान तहरीक इंसाफ. So, sister or the brother ideological party, whatever you would like to call it. So they took up the charge on social media since 2014. It's almost been a decade. And I have been their love child. I have been the focus of their love on social media, love or hate, whatever you would like to put it like that. Even though at that time, I was covering their very famous and infamous dharna from Lahore to Islamabad, the Azadi March. And I was supposedly their supportive anchor working in their supportive channel. But even then, I used to face a lot of abuse from them. मेरी पिक्चर्स इमरान खान के साथ लगा के, मेरी पिक्चर्स पाकिस्तान तहरीक इंसाफ के दीगर मर्द लोगों के साथ लगा के, उस पर इंतहा के गलीज़ कमेंट्स, इंतहा के लुइड कमेंट्स, इंतहा के वल्गर कमेंट्स. सो ये सब चीज़ें उस वक़्त से चल रही हैं. इनिशियली दिस यूज्ड टू काइंड ऑफ हर्ट मी कि ये सब कुछ क्यों हो रहा है, बिकॉज ये बहुत इनिशियल था. 2014 वो टाइम था पाकिस्तान में कि जब ट्विटर टेक ऑफ कर रहा था. फेसबुक तो था उससे पहले ही, बट ट्विटर उतना ज़्यादा एक्टिव नहीं था. 2014 ऑनवर्ड्स पाकिस्तान में ट्विटर एंड देन इंस्टाग्राम बहुत ज़्यादा फेमस होना शुरू हो गया है. सो दिस यूज्ड टू काइंड ऑफ हर्ट कि यार ये सब कुछ क्या है, आई एम जस्ट डूइंग माई वर्क, सो व्हाई इज दिस हैपनिंग टू मी. उसके बाद केम 2016 and I joined another channel. So they thought that I have joined an entire channel which is anti-Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf ki policy, which is not like that, which was not like that, and which has got nothing to do with my personal preference. मैं जहाँ पर भी काम कर रही हूँ, I would be doing my journalistic work irrespective of what the editorial policy of that organization is. और यही वजह है कि मैं अपने 20 साल के करियर में जितने भी इदारों के साथ काम करती रही हूँ, एडिटोरियल पॉलिसी पे मेरा हमेशा डिबेट रहा है कि व्हाट आई थिंक इज़ राइट, आई वुड डू दैट. आई वुड नॉट टेक डिक्टेशंस, आई वुड नॉट टेक द पॉलिसी लाइंस कि इसको सपोर्ट करना है या उसको सपोर्ट नहीं करना. तो यहाँ पर आपका एक जर्नलिस्टिक क्लैश आता रहता है, बट वो किसी इदारे की क्या पॉलिसी है, कोई जर्नलिस्ट उसका जिम्मेदार नहीं होता. बट पाकिस्तान तहरीक इंसाफ हैज़ बीन पुटिंग मी इनटू दैट ओन पॉलिटिकल कटहरा कि नहीं जी, ये जहाँ पर जाएंगी हम इनको फलां चीज़ के साथ टैग कर देंगे. सो उसमें when I started interviewing people from other political parties, like from Pakistan People's Party, from PMLN, from MQM, they started targeting me. कि now she is the paid of them, so she is having them as well. They just wanted कि हमारे ही लोगों को, हमारी ही सियासी जमात को फोकस मिले, which is not journalism at all. They did not want the other side of the narrative, the other side of the journalism to be shown. So 2016 onwards, ये बहुत ज़्यादा पीक पे चला गया, so much so कि मेरे खिलाफ एक सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट की कैंपेन स्टार्ट कर दी गई फ्रॉम पाकिस्तान तहरीक इंसाफ के अपने लोग, जिसमें बाद में एक स्टेट मिनिस्टर जरताज गुल साहिबा, शी पार्टिसिपेट, एक्चुअली शी लेड दैट कैंपेन. And against that campaign, I went to FIA, जो कि अब कम से कम 7-8 साल हो गए हैं, but I haven't found any justice, I haven't found anything at all कि जो मुझे वहाँ पे support कर सके from the FIA. So this is all very tough. जैसे मैंने आपसे कहा कि शुरू में ये hurt करता है, but then we the women, we have to fight. We are talking about open South Asia. ख़वातीन को गालियाँ देने में South Asia is very open. ख़वातीन को टारगेट करने में वी आर ऑलरेडी विदाउट बॉर्डर्स, बी इट एनी कंट्री. हम किसी को कोई हम इस पे कोई लगी लपटी नहीं रखते हैं. चाहे कोई खातून इंडिया में काम कर रही है, कोई खातून पाकिस्तान में काम कर रही है, पाकिस्तान से बैठ के लोग उसको गालियाँ देंगे, इंडिया में बैठ के लोग पाकिस्तान की जर्नलिस्ट को गालियाँ देंगे. सो वी आर माशाल्लाह वेरी ओपन. यहाँ पे कोई बॉर्डर्स, कोई वीज़ा का हम लोग कोई चीज़ कोई लिमिट नहीं रखते हैं अपना. सो ये चीज़ हमें आपस में ये चीज़ हम सबको आपस में कनेक्ट करना चाहिए. हम जब साउथ एशियन वुमेन एंड द मेन एज वेल. ओके, एक चीज़ मैं ज़रूर करना चाहूँगी. यस, दिस हरासमेंट, दिस डिजिटल हरासमेंट, दिस डिजिटल वायलेंस, दिस इज़ नॉट जेंडर रिलेटेड, बट येस, ऑन द वेरी सेम पर्सपेक्टिव, दिस इज़ वेरी जेंडर स्पेसिफिक एज वेल. क्योंकि हमारे कम से कम पाकिस्तान की हद तक मैं ज़रूर कहना चाहूँगी, मुनीज़ नोज़ एज वेल, कि हमारे जो मेल जर्नलिस्ट हैं, जो हमारे मेल कॉलीग्स हैं, जब उनको टारगेट किया जाता है, येस, दे आर बीइंग कॉल्ड लिफाफा, they are being called Ghaddar, they are being called Patwari, or whatever the word that comes to your mind, or even the prostitute. But when it comes to the women journalists, हमें yes, लिफाफा, Ghaddar, prostitute, flan, सब कुछ कहा जाता है. But again, we are those abusive things as well, जो कि मैं नहीं बोल सकती यहाँ पे. हमें वो गालियाँ पड़ती हैं, हमें उस किस्म के सेक्सुअल कमेंट्स पढ़ते हैं जो हमारे मेल काउंटर पार्ट्स को नहीं किए जाते. हमारे बॉडी पार्ट्स के हवाले से हमें सेक्सुअल कमेंट्स पढ़ते हैं, सेक्सुअल हमारी तस्वीरें कहीं से उठा ली जाती हैं, चाहे वो हमारी पर्सनल हो, चाहे वो फैमिली के साथ हो, उसको मॉर्फ करके, उसको फोर्ज करके, उसमें से पता नहीं क्या क्या अजीब व गरीब किस्म का गंद और गलाजत निकाल के, ये सब चीज़ें हमारे मेल काउंटर पार्ट्स को फेस नहीं करनी पड़ती। और अनफॉर्चुनेटली मैं हमेशा कहती हूँ कि पाकिस्तान में इस चीज़ को मज़ीद समझने की ज़रूरत है, हमारी जर्नलिस्टिक बॉडीज़ को भी, कि अगर किसी मर्द पे कोई अटैक होता है तो हमारी सारी जर्नलिस्टिक बॉडीज़ इकट्ठी हो जाती हैं और बहुत वेहमेंटली दे सपोर्ट इट वेरी एग्रेसिवली. But when the women journalists are targeted with abuse, targeted with sexual harassment, targeted with digital online violence, उसको अभी उतनी ज़्यादा इम्पोर्टेंस या उसकी ग्रेविटी को या उसकी सेवेरिटी को अभी उतना नहीं समझा जा रहा. अगर एक मर्द जर्नलिस्ट को गोली लगती है और एक खातून जर्नलिस्ट को गाली पड़ती है, दोनों का इम्पैक्ट वही होता है. आप ये मत समझिए कि गोली लगने का जो दर्द है या गोली लगने का जो खौफ है या गोली लगने का जो एक फिजिकल ट्रॉमा है या सोशल ट्रॉमा है वो किसी भी तरह से गाली पड़ने से कम है. एक गाली किसी भी खातून के लिए एक मुआशरे में रहते हुए उसके लिए बहुत हर्टफुल होता है. इट कैन डैमेज हर रिप्यूट, it can damage her family, it can damage her social relations, it can put her into a physical and social trauma. So gali and goli, they are both equally impactful. ये हमारी journalistic bodies को पाकिस्तान में समझने की ज़रूरत है और इस पे हमें बहुत aggressively काम करने की भी ज़रूरत है. Sorry if I am crossing my time limit. Because I have so much to say.
Of course.
And
our audience loved it. So thank you so much. आपने दो बहुत अहम points raise किए. पहला ये कि online violence जो है उसको normalize किया जाता है. A lot of people, well-meaning people say, ये तो होता ही है. Why are you making a fuss? Why are you trying to play victim? They perhaps don't understand the severity of it. दूसरा, online hate is a form of violence. अगर आप इंटरनेशनली देखें, सीडॉ की डेफिनेशंस देखें, आप बाकी इंटरनेशनल ह्यूमन राइट्स इदारों की डेफिनेशंस देखें, द काइंड ऑफ हेट, अब्यूज, attacks you face online, they will meet the definition of violence set by these bodies. So thank you for pointing that out. Ahmed, if we can move on to you. आप Maldives में you used to work with the Human Rights Commission there, and your area of focus is women's justice for women. So what is the situation like in the Maldives, and is it also women there who are disproportionately attacked online, or is the situation a bit different?
Firstly, thank you for this opportunity. Yes, to answer your question, and I think having heard from my esteemed colleagues who have spoken about their experiences in the different countries within South Asia, the one thing that links all our Southeast Asian neighbours, all of us, unfortunately, is that sort of our propensity to be always misogynistic in everything that we do. And similarly, in the Maldives, going to the question that you asked, yes, there is a lot of online hatred. There's a lot of online trolling, which both men and women face. But as has been talked about on this forum, the kind of hate, the kind of violence that women face online is very different to that faced by men. And I'm also it sort of took me back a little bit to realize that, this doesn't just happen in the Maldives. I mean, the way that women are sexualized, objectified on social media for comments that they make, which men usually don't have to, is actually, is horrifying. The way that they are always, for example, whenever there are women political activists, when they go out to the streets and protest, with men, it's always seen as a form of political protest for what it is. But when women come out and protest on the streets, the narrative is always about, these women are coming out on the streets who are going to look after their children, who are going to look after their families. So obviously they're really sort of, doing something that they shouldn't be, as it's not expected of them to be out on the street protesting for political purposes or whatever. So I think the kind of hatred that they face in a way, augmented by the fact that there is so much misogyny, there's so much gender discrimination in the country. But one thing I also want to sort of, from the Maldivian experience, both for men and women, is that the digital space has become sort of more dangerous than even the physical space these days. Just to give you a bit of a context, Maldives is a very, very small country. And we're about, the total population is just over 400,000 people. So literally everyone sort of knows everyone. So it's very easy to create, you know, a series of vicious online attacks in a way that the larger public believes about you and sort of completely damages and destroys your reputation. More so for women because they sort of always, there is that inherent misogyny attached to the kind of attacks they face. But I also want to sort of highlight two key individuals. I mean, two of my friends who were very vehement online human rights activists. One was a blogger, the other was a journalist. Yeah. Both of them really fighting for the human rights violations that were taking place about 6, 7, 8 years ago. So in August of 2014, one of them was abducted, and to this day we do not know what's happened to him. And then a friend of mine and a friend of his who was actively campaigning to get justice for this disappeared journalist was murdered in 2017 inside his own house. And both the abduction and the murder, both of them resulted from, you know, out of the hatred and violence that was perpetuated against them online. So I think the way that the online violence translates onto the physical space is a huge problem in the country. I mean, I faced it myself. I know colleagues of mine who face it constantly, day in, day out. Whatever little thing that you say is always twisted. And then in the Maldives, for example, the main type of violence perpetuated, or the main type of narrative that's brought against you when you're on social media is mostly around religion. So whatever, for example, if you say something about empowering women, you then get targeted by hordes of religious extremist trolls that sort of start campaigning about the fact that the reason that you're talking about women's rights is because you don't believe in the inherent women's rights provided in Islam. So there's a lot of ideologically justified violence happening on the online space in the Maldives. And it's also often translated into the physical space because there is so much impunity, there is very little oversight in terms, and I do understand that when we talk about oversight, particularly on the online space, we are sort of treading dangerous ground because we sort of need to be mindful of the issue of freedom of expression as well. Yeah. But at the same time, I think there's a very clear-cut line between freedom of expression and inciting violence and hatred. And I think there is well, at the moment, for example, the current government has provided a lot more freedom of expression than has been for the last previous 5 years. So there is an openness within the social media platform, within the online platforms. But at the same time, there is a misconception, a conflation of this idea that you know, someone expressing their opinions about the rights of women has the, you know, is sort of confused with someone expressing ideas about hurting another person, inciting violence, inciting hatred. And there was I'm not sure if it's as popular as it was when it first came out, but the online platform called Clubhouse became very popular in the Maldives when it first came out. And one thing that was very, very iconic about this particular platform was that it was used by mostly the majority of the one group of people who actually made most use of this were radical religious groups who were very, very, in a way, active to promote their ideologies. So there were certain sessions, for example, where they were calling to go to the houses of people, drag them out and slit their throats. And I mean, these were clearly does not fall under the purview of freedom of expression. But sometimes when it is done in the guise of religion, conflating these ideas with religious doctrine, it sometimes becomes difficult for people to stop them. I mean, for example, this particular incident was reported to the police, but yeah.
That's a really important point, and actually we have a separate question for this, so we'll come back to this to this later. You spoke about religion. In Pakistan right now, one of Pakistan's most prominent digital rights activists, women's rights activists, she tweeted about TLP, an extremist religious party, you can say, movement in Pakistan. She tweeted about how they were in one of their gatherings making misogynist commentary. She tweeted about it, and the response immediately was the most vile online campaign against her. So we also see that it's not just political parties in the mainstream it's also parties like religious parties here who are behind such campaign. And at times in Pakistan, at least, we've seen that has a greater likelihood of also being it doesn't just remain in online spaces, it can also actually lead to physical harm as well. Now let's move on to Bangladesh, and we have with us Naznin, Munni, and I was reading about what you went through earlier this year. It was most shocking and horrifying. So if you can talk about your own experience and generally what is the situation like in Bangladesh?
Yeah, thank you, Reema, and I think there are beautiful audience and my co-speakers. Thank you so much for giving me such an opportunities to share my feeling, all of my scaring adventure, like story. So I'm Naznin Munni. I'm working with a 24-hour news channel called Ekatto Television. So I think you are recognize this Ekatto number, all of you. I'm anchor, and basically I'm a reporter. So I'm doing a political show which resolves some political issues all over the time. And from the very beginning of my career, I'm working with some political extremists, fanatics, and also the religious extremists who try to doing something odd, something ferocious, something very very awful for our country. From the very beginning, they are against me. And when I did some political shows and some report, when it get into the social media, there is lots of bullying, lots of swearing in the comment box. So at first I ignored, and I thought that I have to do all the work I want to do. So finally, earlier in this year, they crossed all the limit. They made a fake porn video and named Naznin Munni and spread into the whole social media. And that was a horrible experience for me because my family is too restricted and my grown up is so in a decent way. So I didn't see such a video in personal life. And I faced that type of video which named Naznin Munni and saw all over the world and knocked me minute by minute in my inbox that this is your video, what you want to tell. that's a horrible experience, you know, that was a nightmare for me. And they did that because they tried to demoralize me. They tried to make some unexpected person by the society. And you know, when I faced this situation, my office was not beside me. They said that just ignore, avoid it. Why should you such reacted like, I'm sorry, I'm on the mobile. So they said that why you are so reacting? Just avoid it. But that was not accepted by me because as a person, as a human being, as a journalist, I was nowhere that there is a porn video named Naznin Munni and everyone watching it. So I thought that despite I have to take this fight, and I filed a case. Within 15 days, police take the action and arrest 3 fanatics. Fanatics, not that they are fanatics, they are rival political leaders and activists and workers actually. And why they did that? They did that because they thought I am threatened to them. Because I conducted political show and that hampered their political parties and leaders. So they tried to hamper me and try to not accepted by the society. And they are in police custody in this time. But I'm facing that video nowadays, and several times, most of the people, my friends, my families, or relatives send it to me, or I don't know the person. They are also send this video in my inbox and said that, oh, what you did, we know everything. And I'm basically sort of popular journalist in Bangladesh, and I have social media followers, lots of. There's 300K followers in my Facebook profile and 100K in my personal profile, and my Twitter, my Instagram. There are lots of followers follow me, and they are general people. So I have the acceptance in the country and the society. So they choose the social media for destroying me because I am socially accepted person and popular person. So I faced and I absorbed lots of threat like rape, you are prostitute, you are something. I never heard in my life, in my family life or my personal life. I heard lots of things, but this is the horrible thing I have ever faced in my life, and I'm facing it nowadays also.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm sure it was very traumatizing to relive that entire experience. And we'll ask you later what is happening with the complaint you filed, and do you expect any form of justice? I mean, what does justice even look like after you put someone through this? We'll come back to this later when we speak about how to respond to trolling. Munizae, now to you. And I have to say, I'm reminded of Asma Jahangir Sahiba. She was, of course, also trolled a lot online. And once she was talking about and supporting Valentine's Day and saying something against why should Valentine's Day be banned. And trolls said, oh, would you mind if I ask your daughter out on a date for Valentine's Day? And she replied, well, ask me out first. So she had she dealt with the trolls with humor, and she seemed to have really thick skin. How do you respond to trolling? And Gharidah pointed out that Tehreek-e-Insaf, PTI, is largely behind such campaigns. Would you agree? I mean, is that the churail in the Pakistani context?
Well, let's firstly thank you for everybody for coming here, the audience, Nidhi, Razdan, Ahmed, Tholal, our friends from Sri Lanka, Munni from Bangladesh. Thank you so much for doing this and for opening up on a very important issue. You mentioned my mother. She did have a thick skin, and for her, Twitter was, and she used to call it Twitters. It was a walk in the park because she had been a street fighter.
Absolutely.
She had been arrested, she had been attacked, she had been assaulted by the police nonetheless. And so she used to take this as a walk in the park. And so did I, because I had grown up seeing this. But I remember that when the trolling became too much and the PTI was in government, everybody got together, all of us women, and I'm going to try and address who is the churail. All of us got together and we said we have to address this issue. And I said to them, why address this issue? Let them call us whatever they want. Hamara kya jata hai? Hamari koi haddiyan thodi toot rahi hain. But then they said, no, this cannot be the new normal.
Yeah.
Our next generation is not going to be abused in this manner and say that this is the new normal. And that's when I realized that desensitizing yourself to this kind of hate is not on. And that's when we decided, if you all remember, I'll relive it, that we went and complained to the Human Rights Committee in the National Assembly. And at that time, Shireen Mazari was the Human Rights Minister, and she was brought in. And we asked her, we had started recording who were the people who were basically trolling us, and their Twitter handles. And we gave it to her, and there was one guy who was the PTI local councillor. So she said, he's not our local councillor. I said, then whose local councillor is he? If he's not on your list, then whose local councillor is it? So it's not always the churail who appears to be the churail. There is somebody behind the churail. People who often troll me, I look at their timelines. And the reason I don't block them, Reema, is because something I learned from my mother. You should always watch them because then you know where the threat is coming from. So I don't block them. Nidhi mentioned that she blocks them. And, you know, it's such a large country, I don't blame her. These were not people who were from the PTI, but they were perhaps the people who had brought in the PTI. And they were hiding behind these different identities. Let me say it openly so our international guests also understand. It was the military. Whenever I've done shows on missing persons, I know that on Twitter, I will be trolled. I will be called names. My mother will be called names. I know that when I do a show on Balochistan, I will be called names. I know when I do a show on the corruption of the military, it will happen. Of course, PTI trolls. There is no doubt about that. But I do not know who uses PTI to troll also. And that is something that they should address now that they are no longer on the same page. I would just, because I want to keep it short, I think that there is a problem. My friend Gharidah said that there is something that we share across the borders, and that is that people have not yet accepted that we are 50% of the population. We are 50% of the population, and we will come into the workforce, and we will say whatever we need to say, and with full expression and with free expression. I think South Asia has still not come round to accepting that women have started to come in the mainstream. And we are here and we are not ready to go back. So I think there first needs to be an acceptance of that. And secondly, I think one of the effects that trolling, especially sexual abuse, has, that inadvertently you start thinking that because you are going to be sexually abused, you start also self-censoring yourself somewhere. And you know that if you're going to make a remark on missing persons, this person will attack you. You even know the person Twitter handle that will attack you. I hope that not just in Pakistan, but in India, where they need it now, in Sri Lanka, in Maldives, where my friend Naznin Munni is, that women will come together and they will find the churail. Because ab churail ki shamat aani chahiye. And the churail should be called out. And there should be, and I offer from this platform that AGHS Legal Aid will do all free cases of women who have been trolled sexually online. And we will be happy to do those cases. Because unless the churail is held accountable, I do not think that the society will learn a lesson and they will recognize that we are 50% of the population.
Thank you. We'll come back to what should be done in response to trolling, because as a lawyer, I start thinking about how this can be misused. If you start taking legal action against trolling, where do you draw the line? When is trolling a criminal offense? When is trolling some other kind of offense? Is regulation a better way to deal with it? Sometimes perhaps we will have to learn to ignore. And the most important thing, finding who is behind these campaigns, because it's not just one person. They're armies who are trained, who are given resources. It's not just something that happens organically. We'll come to this later. I wanted to speak about, I was reading this book, What is Populism? And in that, the author argues that populist governments and populist movements who claim that only they represent the people, everyone else is an imposter, they tend to use such weapons, such tools more. Why? Because if they see that there are enough of people who are actually going against their narrative, the entire premise of their politics falls flat. Because the premise is that they alone represent the people, they're the true representatives. So Nidhi, if I can come to you, is this the experience in India? I mean, does this resonate? That those who are behind these campaigns, these troll armies, they want to show that only they represent the people. Any other critical dissenting voice has to be called illegitimate or not credible.
I think that's very true. And I think that, these are the people then who also need to, have enemies, as it were. And they need to, tell their faithful that, look, these are the enemies. Whether they're imaginary or real or whatever, but that's how you then whip up hysteria and sentiment, etc. In India, unfortunately, this is now a problem, as I briefly mentioned at the beginning, that's gone beyond even the ruling establishment. Right. You criticize any mainstream political party today, even the Congress, even the AAP, and the kind of vicious online campaign that is launched against you, especially if you're a woman journalist. So these are unfortunate tactics that they've all learned from each other. And I think that the commonality is actually just inherent misogyny.
Right.
So it doesn't matter what your political ideology is.
Right.
And even whether you're an Indian or a Pakistani, or even frankly, Munizae, I see it in the American media also, women journalists being trolled so badly. The misogyny is so inherent. It's just, I think it just essentially comes from that inherent sexism more than anything else, which transcends boundaries.
A little anecdote I'd like to share here. I was being asked by a lot of social media accounts to condemn sexism that Maryam Nawaz Sharif had apparently used a sexist word. Now, I woke up one morning, thousands of notifications asking me to condemn, but how were they asking me? By calling me sexualized abuse. That, can I say it here? Yeah, so Gashti, Randi, isko condemn kyun nahi karti? If you are calling somebody such slurs which are sexist, which are abusive, which are violent, but you are claiming that you actually care about sexism and you want me to condemn sexism by subjecting me to it. So it just shows how so much of it is so hypocritical. Do you, Gharidah, Munizae, want to speak about the link between populism, certain authoritarian kind of populism, and how that's associated with just silencing dissenting voices? Because, yeah.
Well, I think not just the populist mindset, or not just the populist political party, or not just a certain populist organization, or whatever that group of people be called. I think what the second part of this discussion is, who is the churail? It could be anybody. It could not just be a single populist mindset, or a single populist political mindset, or a single populist party, or a single populist organization, political one. It could be any churail, be it the religious churail, be it the security establishment churail, be it the state element churail, be it the non-state element churail, call it a churail, call it a ghost, call it a khalai makhluk, call it whatever you want to do it. But yes, all people, all that kind of mindset which does not approve of women taking the lead, equal and equivalent to men in the society, they're all the churails. So they're all those people who come to the forefront, who attack women in whatever way they deem appropriate, in whatever way that suits them, in whatever way they want to attack. अभी यहाँ पर बात की गई बांग्लादेश से हमारी एक साथी ने बात की कि पॉर्न वीडियो, वहाँ से अहमद ने बात की कि रिलीजियस एक्सट्रीमिज्म के हवाले से. I would like to share a very a difficult kind of experience that I faced on that, perhaps it was last year on that Badi Eid, Bakra Eid. So I just tweeted a few of my thoughts about this Qurbani and this sacrificial thing. So now in a civilized, in a democratic, in a critical society which enables and which encourages critical thinking or different thinking, that kind of tweet or that kind of statement would have been debated upon or would have been welcomed. Instead, mere khilaf blasphemy ke charges start ho gaye. So now I'm facing 2 blasphemy ki petitions in Lahore against me, and they have been running on since past 1.5 years. Porn videos, जो हमारी बांग्लादेश के साथी ने एक बात की, yes, I have faced them as well. So all these kind of traumas, they are very much alike across the borders, across the world. और इसमें सिर्फ किसी एक political party, किसी एक political group को आप जिम्मेदार नहीं ठहरा सकते. इसके पीछे हर किस्म का element शामिल रहा है. जैसे मैंने कहा कि उसमें security establishment भी शामिल रहती है, उसमें non-security elements भी शामिल रहते हैं, state elements भी शामिल रहते हैं, non-state elements भी शामिल रहते हैं. अब आपने इसका करना क्या है? आप इसको ब्लॉक करना शुरू कर दें, आप इसको ना ब्लॉक करें. What should be the criteria? It depends upon you personally. If you are strong enough, if you think you can take it on, just go heads on. Just fight it out. I mean, that's my personal process. I block to some extent. जैसे आपने भी सवाल उठाया कि किस जगह पर जाके ट्रोलिंग जो है वायलेंट हो जाती है, कहाँ पे जाके ऑफेंस बन जाता है और कौन सी वो लिमिट है जहाँ पर वो ऑफेंस नहीं बनता. एक ट्रोलिंग होती है जो कि बिल्कुल मजाक की हद तक लेनी चाहिए. छोटा मोटा कोई आपको मजाक कर देता है, and which only restricts itself to a few of the tweets, 10s, 20s, perhaps, that's it. But when it is an organized, when it is a planned, when it is a coordinated campaign, you just get the gist of it. आपको पता चल जाता है कि thousands and thousands of tweets are coming in with one single hashtag, with one single sentence, with some coordinated sentences. That means that it is. That means that is the offense. That means now it is translating into the violence. और एक चीज़ जो digital violence में बहुत खतरनाक है, it just not restrains itself to the digital periphery, to the digital spectrum. It can translate, and it does translate into the real life as well. Again, I would like to quote my example ताकि आप लोगों को समझने में आसानी हो. You guys remember New Zealand का Christchurch का attack where a white man, he just opened firing into a mosque. So I tweeted about that. CNN की एक story which quoted that the culprit, he had once traveled to Pakistan. It was a CNN की story, and I just tweeted it on my Twitter account. So उसके बाद a very well planned, very coordinated campaign started against me that wherever you see Gharidah, आपको जहाँ पर भी नजर आए इसको थप्पड़ मारें. So this kind of campaign started against me, and it kept on going for 2-3 days. I just ignored it. So when they saw that this is being ignored, so they moved a jump ahead, they moved a foot ahead, and they said कि Gharidah जहाँ पर भी नजर आए इसको गोली मार दें. So that was the real life threat I faced, and because of that campaign, I could not step out of my house for 3-4 months. I wrote to the Prime Minister, Imran Khan was at that time. I wrote to the President, who is still the current sitting President. I wrote to the National Assembly. I wrote to the Senate. I wrote to all the opposition leader. I wrote to all political parties. But again, and I again went to FIA. So my 7 to 8 petitions, as of now we speak, are still lying like ducks in FIA. Nothing is happening on there. So we must come to that part,
Yes, we'll come.
how to tackle that. What are the organizations doing to keep women secure, to keep journalists secure from the digital online violence, from the harassment, from all these kind of things? So I think I should
Yeah,
just
that's fine. We'll come to this later, absolutely. I wanted to also ask, we're all here activists and journalists. When you face such constant abuse, Munizae, you spoke about censorship, that you automatically start thinking this will get abused, so I should not talk about this issue. What do the others feel? How does it impact your work? Are there certain red lines that get internalized, entrenched? On the flip side, do you think the people who attack you, can it be expected of activists and journalists to be objective and impartial when they report or when they respond to those groups, those people? How does it affect an activist and a journalist's work after being subjected to such trolling? Naznin, would you like to take this?
Yeah, thank you. I think I told you earlier that my office was not beside me. They are not with me when I filed the case also. But after that, when I saw the video and the video goes viral to the social media, on that moment, I was on the screen, television screen. I was so broken, and I was so broken that I can't explain you to all. But that was my fight. I'm not a loser. That someone tried to dump me, someone tried to make me unaccepted, and I did such thing what they want to. So on that day, I was on the screen and I did the political show, my reporting, and I'm a content editor. I gave the content and I make rundowns. So I did all the things normally, but inner me was broken. And I thought, how could I come over this situation and what I should do? Because I told you earlier that my family is so much restricted, and when they know about this situation and the story, they totally pick up me from the media because they don't want to make me vulnerable and they don't want to make me face this situation. So I was too worried that anything could be happen, but I don't want to make this story hide from my family.
Right.
And my family doesn't know anything because social media is not popular in my family. So I think they don't know such massive action against me. But my office was totally known this situation, but they don't do anything, and they do not stand beside me, and they don't they ignore all the thing. And when I informed my bosses, my colleagues, and my friends, they said, okay, it could happen. Just ignore it. Don't make any discussion about this. Such a lame talk they talked with me. But at that time, I need a strong person who can hold me, who can guide me to face this situation. But there was no one. So I was so down, and I thought that what I'm doing for the government, for the office, for myself, for the journalist, or what I'm doing. There is nobody beside me. So you guys are discussed about trolling. I think this is not troll. Trolling meaning some lame fun or something like that. But what we are facing is just like a abuse and.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And as Gharidah said, this is violence.
This is not troll.
Yeah,
this is not troll. And those who try to ignore this situation and ignore this matter, I think they are main culprit and they are main criminal.
Yes.
Because if you are ignore all the time, all they are doing all time such a thing, and they demoralize, they dump, they made unexpected by the society, all of us.
Yes,
so
absolutely.
we should move on. We should stand strong. You can't do this. You can't do this. I'm telling a thing that all this happen year by year. I'm facing such a thing. And when some fanatic, when some mental patient, I must say, when some opposite political parties leader or activist or religious extremist who make a comment on the social media is public, there is name, there is his or her whole comment, this awful comment, that threat, all things, but there is not a single step taken by the government or by the by our own channel or house station. There is not a single step. Okay.
So after Naznin, we're going to come to that after this question. It's a very important issue that has to be discussed. Who bears the responsibility and what kind of response should we expect from the government? Nidhi has to leave. So I want, Nidhi, if you can respond to this question. How has the trolling, abuse, targeting, you've spoken about violence online, how has that impacted your work as a journalist? Are there certain red lines that have been entrenched? And what about what people say, objectivity, impartiality? Is it even possible to maintain it in the face of such abuse?
I don't think it has affected my work at all. And I think that that is actually the best response that all of us can give to those who troll us, which is to continue to do our work and to do it honestly and professionally. I think what has happened, however, is that I do find myself sometimes thinking twice before I put a tweet out there. Because I think to myself, is it worth it? Is it worth the sort of abuse I'm going to face over this? So yes, I will tweet from time to time on certain issues that I do feel very strongly about. But other times I will find myself holding back. But not when it comes to my work. When it comes to my journalism, I will continue to do it the way I've always done it. I will continue to speak out on issues that I think matter, the challenges that we face in as a country. You mentioned this whole thing earlier, Reema, about legal action. I'm a little wary about that unless it crosses a certain line in terms of actual threats of violence, because our judicial system frankly is very screwed up, right? In this entire region, you're going to go and file a police complaint against everyone who is trolling you. You will find yourself going to court for the next 25 years, if that, and it will just go nowhere. And I'm also not in favor of sending everyone to jail for being, I don't want to use bad words here, but for being an idiot and for being a troll. I don't think people should go to jail for that. But if you're threatening violence, if you're making rape threats, if you're morphing videos, I think then, yes, I think women and anyone who faces that should seriously consider a police complaint. I have done it 2-3 times in cases where the person was physically stalking me and one person landed up at the doorstep of my house. That's when I got really scared and I did file a police complaint and he was arrested. And when we went to court, actually, he turned out to be a professor in a college. It was so shocking that, he was like a stalker and a troller and all the rest of it. And the judge, I told the judge, I said, if he makes a pledge here in court to leave me alone, and I'm willing to drop, the case against him. And the judge was so angry with me and said, no, you should make an example of this guy. I'm sending him to jail for 2 nights for this. And, he did that, for 2 nights because I insisted that, okay, I didn't want to punish someone's entire life for making a wrong decision. But I do think, yes, do take action if you feel threatened. And otherwise, look, when it comes to blocking, I think Munizae has found a mechanism with which she deals with this without, and she feels comfortable doing it without having to block anyone. I feel more comfortable blocking abusers because I think we all have different ways in which we deal with things and how it affects our mental health. And I think that when it does affect your mental health, block it. You don't have to see that bakwas. You don't have to see all the abuse directed against you. But everyone has their own mechanisms to deal with. There's no right way or wrong way. to deal with it. And because we live in societies, like I said, where a legal system is going to drag you to court for years on end, I think the important thing, is to call out the violence. If you have violent threats against you, call out those people on Twitter. I actually believe in tagging those handles many times, and tagging the police on those handles, and just amplifying it. So to that extent, I agree with Munizae that you need to name and shame these people as well. But many times, I just think the best answer is to continue doing your work, and doing it professionally. And finally, I just want to say how much admiration I have for all of you who are here on this panel today. It is, it's remarkable the kind of work all of you do, in these very difficult and toxic and polarized, environments that we all live in. So hats off to you guys. Really, it's really an honor to have shared this space with all of you.
Thank you so much, Nidhi. We learn from you, and the grace and the courage with which you respond to such attacks and continue doing great work. It's inspirational. Last thing I want to ask you, 1 minute only, is the importance of solidarity among women activists, journalists. Do you see that in India? Do we see that? I mean, we're talking about bringing South Asia together. Are we together even in our own countries? And how important do you think that is?
To some extent, yes. Unfortunately, not as much as it should be. And I think that's just to do with the polarized political environment, in which everyone sort of got divided into different WhatsApp groups. And, therefore, it depends on which side of the ideological divide you lean on. And, then you will decide which cause you're going to rally around. So, however, despite that, I have to say I have a fantastic set of colleagues and friends. And I'm sorry, Naznin, that your organization did not stand by you when you needed them to. I am so grateful. I mean, when I was listening to your story, it really made my hair stand on end, and I realized how lucky I have been that I've had a support structure, whether it's fellow colleagues from different news organizations, women, but also my own organization. I mean, NDTV has been a rock, for me and for all of us who have consistently faced any kind of harassment. So I'm sorry, Naznin, that you've had to face this so much on your own. And I hope that somebody in your organization is listening to this with some shame today, for God's sake, internationally today, that they've allowed you to go through this. So yes, solidarity, Reema, but we could do with a lot more solidarity on this.
Okay. Thank you so much for your time. It was great having you.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
All right. Damith, I would like to come to you now, because we've been speaking about women, but there are also other marginalized identities, groups, communities who also face insidious kind of trolling. I mean, it's a bit different perhaps, but it's disproportionate and it is very targeted. So would you like to speak about that, particularly from the Sri Lankan context?
Yes. When it comes to, we should, perhaps the discussion was more on accountability and the impunity, and in generally, I haven't seen a single case in Sri Lanka where the perpetrators of some case of violence against digital space, if it is not connected to government, having been punished. So largely the cases remain in impunity. And when it comes to women, also, our news rooms are full of sexual harassment violence. And then if I go into LGBTIQ community, the situation is more worse. And the fact that the homosexuality has been criminalized in Sri Lanka, the legal situation impacts. And also there are less laws to protect people from the violence in the cyberspace. So definitely even the existing laws discriminatively used against LGBTIQ people. So there are many things. I mean, it can be a personal photo sometimes. It can be some other thing which they, with the LGBTIQ people might not expected trolling, but suddenly because of the political situation, because of they needed to be targeted for something, they are trolled both online and perhaps even the mainstream media reporting is horrible in some cases.
Yeah.
For example, one trans activist who was involved in the uh, last anti-governmental protest, and her her story of being a trans person, the transition process was mentioned as some. I mean, the tone and everything what was written, it's like she's hiding some crime and. I mean, has done some antisocial thing. So from that tone, it was published in a national newspaper about her personal stories in a really gossip manner, in a personally insulting manner. At the time, she was hiding for her protection, couldn't go to the police even. So there are many cases like that, and when it comes to individuals, mm, uh, these things have become so much normalized.
Yeah.
I mean, one way is just ignoring, like a lot of us do, and the other way is perhaps making a police complaint. But police, again, police and judiciary has rarely been LGBTIQ friendly, and a lot of people, a lot of LGBTIQ individuals doesn't have courage to go
Yeah.
and face that the homophobic treatment or whatever,
Yeah.
to open up with their identity and even to say I'm a gay man or I'm a transgender person at the police, because they are opening up them for another form of discrimination and violence at the police. So one thing is that I think this should be pushed through perhaps through our existing networks of perhaps media organizations, perhaps collectives of civil society. But then again, who leads these collectives? I don't see many women activists or women journalists leading media rights organizations. So when it comes to LGBTIQ community, there are very few. I mean, very few activists in the civil society. I mean, I am one of them, but these issues are just ignored, and even the knowledge has not been discussed in the civil society, and even if it was discussed at the much surface level.
Yeah.
So
That's
there I
really
will
important.
stop.
Absolutely. So we also see homophobia, transphobia across the state. I mean, different, structures. It's an institutional problem. It's a structural problem. But you raised a really important point about women, in particular, not being in leadership positions in the media and in unions, in other journalist bodies. What's the situation like, Ahmed, in the Maldives? And I also want to ask, what responsibility do you think digital platforms like Twitter and Facebook, what is their responsibility in all of this? Because at the end of the day, it's their platform that is being used to incite violence and hate speech.
So I think it's been very interesting hearing every one of you talk about your experiences, and I think that there is it resonates with what's happening in the Maldives as well. I'll start with the first question. Over the last several years, where I've sort of seen, I've experienced violence online. I've sort of, most of the time, whether it's Facebook or Twitter, I've made it a point to report these kinds of responses and conversations. But I think the trolls and those who actually use social media platforms for hate and violence have also become very creative. They actually, when they need to tweet something hateful, something that amounts to inciting violence, they use the local language. They don't use English. So when I report it, with algorithms, don't pick it up as something that violates their community. For example, if I get very irritated by a comment and use a profanity, if I use the F word, for example, then my tweet will get flagged as being inappropriate. So I think there is a responsibility, an inherent responsibility of these social media platforms to actually change the algorithms with which they work to make sure that trolls and people sort of perpetuating hate online don't get away with using these loopholes. And I also want to very quickly sort of address the question you started with about self-censorship. And unfortunately, every single day since I joined Twitter and since I've been part of the social media, I've had to rethink what I'm putting out on social media, primarily because I am literally fearful of the hate and violence that will be perpetuated as a result. And this is much worse for women and sexual minorities in the country. Just to give you an example, most of the time when I tweet about things, the pushback coming from trolls and some of these people creating hatred and violence online is that I'm homosexual. And that's sort of deemed to be the highest level of insult they can sort of come up with. And unfortunately, they don't realize it's not an insult that I sort of take as an insult. But they feel that because they find it insulting, that, you know, labeling someone as a homosexual would, I mean, the problem is that labeling someone as a homosexual in the country is very dangerous for the person that's been labeled, because, and therefore, because of the widespread homophobia and the widespread misogyny, there are things that they can use, labels that they can use, which become more dangerous for certain groups of people, for example, women and sexual minorities. So I think, I mean, just to make a bit of light joke, the kind of things that I face most of the time is recently I actually tweeted asking my friends on Twitter where I can get a good raincoat. And the response from some of these trolls was, maybe you should find a place where they can get a good bottle of shampoo. So many times it focuses on physical appearance, but most of the time it focuses on my head. But with women, as has been discussed on this platform, it's much more vicious. Their face gets morphed into the body of a nude person, porn videos, and that's just unacceptable. And I think, I mean, sometimes I was listening to my colleagues here, I was sort of, in a way, envious, because I think colleagues in Pakistan, Korea, are able to say this more freely and without, I mean, obviously, you have talked about the kind of pushback you get, but I do feel that this whole issue about solidarity, I think, because Maldives is a very small country, and because Maldives is most of the time known as a tourist destination, I think globally, internationally, we tend to sort of conveniently forget and ignore that there are real people facing real problems that people in other larger countries face. Human rights issues, issues of freedom of expression, journalists being threatened, people being killed, and a lot of violent, religious extremism that's completely debilitating to people working in these areas.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's take some questions now for 10 minutes, then we'll break for lunch at 2. If you can please keep your questions really short, because we had a lot of panelists and we've run out of time. But yes, lady in the green shirt.
He has said is half true. It's certainly true, but it's not the complete truth. Because me being the Pakistani journalist, I've been working from the electronic media, print media, web media. So I consider myself one of the most privileged Pakistani female while working in media. We certainly do have problems, but that's half truth. We being the South Asian countries, why can't we portray the good image of our respected countries? Why we always have to talk about bad and negative? I think the exaggeration, the negativity that we portray from our South Asian countries through our media is the real witch actually. Guys, please come on. Western media don't do that. Western media don't exaggerate their violence. They do have rape cases. They do have violence. And but why do we do that? If you have freedom of expressions, you can say our political party is like sister party of BJP. The rest of the participants to have the equal freedom of expression as well. The audience have the right of freedom of expression as well. You always talk about yourself. Please talk about the image of our country, what we are portraying at international level. Please talk about your national interests. South Asian countries, talk about your national interests. Come out of your personal shells. Talk about the national interests of your country.
You want me to respond on that?
I would love to respond to, but please go ahead.
No, I totally respect your point of view, and that's what democracy is all about. That's what decency is all about, and that's what the basic ethos is all about, to respect each other's point of view and to respect each other's journey and to respect each other obstacles and the difficulties and everything. Of course, let me answer to that, and let's not engage into the crosstalk,
Yes,
because
please.
that's against the
Let's
decorum.
speak through the moderator.
That's
yes.
against the decorum
yes.
of the seminar. So journalism, yes, it has two aspects. One, highlighting what is what to the people, be it the positive or the negative. So if the people are suffering, you can't just portray that everything is good and goody and just hush under the carpet, right? So to say कि ख़वातीन सफ़र कर रही हैं, ठीक है, लेकिन सिर्फ वही मत दिखाएं, आप कंट्री का अच्छा पॉजिटिव साइड भी दिखाएं. आपने वेस्ट को भी कोट किया. आई थिंक आप थोड़ा सा ज़रा ज़्यादा वेस्ट को स्टडी कीजिए, ज़्यादा वेस्टर्न चैनल्स को, बी इट फ्रॉम द यूएस, बी इट फ्रॉम द रेस्ट ऑफ द यूरोप, बी इट फ्रॉम यूके और एनीवेयर, और आपको पता चलेगा कि वहाँ पर भी ख़वातीन के, चाहे वो लेट्स नॉट एंगेज इनटू द क्रॉस टॉक.
यस, कैन यू प्लीज.
सो वहाँ पर भी आपको पता चलेगा कि ख़वातीन के मसाइल हैं और वो इस पे बात करते हैं, और वहाँ पर भी ऐसे एलिमेंट्स मौजूद हैं कि ख़वातीन जब अपने आप को दरपेश मसाइल पे बात करते हैं तो उनको कहा जाता है कि आप ये क्यों बात कर रही हैं, आप पॉजिटिव इमेज दिखाइए. सो ख़वातीन जब अपने आप को दरपेश मसाइल, या एक्टिविस्ट अपने आप को दरपेश मसाइल, या कोई भी जब अपने मुल्क को दरपेश मसाइल की बात कर रहा है, इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि वो मुल्क का नेगेटिव इमेज पोर्ट्रे कर रहा है. इसका मतलब ये है कि वो अपने मुल्क की बेहतरी चाहता है. You come from a faithful point of view. You come from a good intention, with a good intention for the betterment of the country. So do the rest of the people. Yes, we also show the positive aspects. आप मेरे 1000 प्रोग्राम्स उठा के देख लें, उसमें से आपको 500-600 प्रोग्राम्स पाकिस्तान के पॉजिटिव इमेज के बारे में ही मिलेंगे. लेकिन जब हम अपने मुसीबतों का, अपने मुश्किलात का, and let's not undermine it, let's not trivialize it, कि ख़वातीन अगर गाली फेस कर रही हैं, ख़वातीन अगर हरासमेंट फेस कर रही हैं, ख़वातीन का अगर रेप हो रहा है, तो आप उस पर बात ना करें, क्योंकि वो पाकिस्तान का नेगेटिव इमेज पोर्ट्रे करता है. सो
अच्छा, प्लीज
I think I like to say over here that the reason that we are talking about ourselves is because we were invited to do so by the organizers.
Yes.
And also because Gharidah is a prominent anchor, and she represents the women of Pakistan when she comes on television, journalists, especially women journalists. And if she can be the target of so much hate campaign, I wonder, and young women, young journalists, especially women, have come to us. In fact, we started in South Asia as part of SOM, the Sexual Harassment Committee. Aap yakeen kare. I used to think that they will meet once, maybe in 2 weeks. Every single day we had a complaint. And we had to expand the Sexual Harassment Committee. That's how bad it is. I remember in the 80s and the 70s when women were raped, उनको कहते थे खामोश हो जाओ, बाहर ना कहना, घर वालों की बेइज्जती होगी. Till you do not address your problems, till you do not say that I have been wronged, how do you expect justice? How will you even rectify things in the criminal justice system. To accept what has happened to you, to accept that you have been a victim, is the first step forward to correcting that problem. Right now, I'm not interested, in what you portray. Right now, it's much more important to give protection to women. That is much more important. और image तभी ठीक होगा जब यहाँ पे चीज़ें नहीं होंगी. आप क्या समझते हैं, आप चुप कर जाएंगे, किसी को कुछ पता नहीं चलेगा, बाहर पागल बैठे हुए हैं. So the thing is that even the West, look at the Ohio rape case, how much media attention the American media gave it. Look at the Gujarat rape case in India that is going on. Look at how much media attention it gave. It is because women should protect one another, they should say no to rape. And they should say no to sexual harassment. So I think that by identifying issues, you're not painting a bad image of your country. I think you're trying to rectify problems that exist and serious violence against women, which should be addressed. And जहाँ तक image of Pakistan का सवाल है, तो वो तो foreign office बैठा हुआ है, उनको तो हम तनख्वाह देते हैं इस काम का.
And I'd just like to add a few words that to me, highlighting human rights abuses and violations is the highest form of patriotism, because you're actually trying to improve your country and make it meet your aspirations that we all want Pakistan to represent.
So in the context of Pakistan, there is a legislation, the Prevention of Electronic Crimes, that also has to do with pornography, as everyone mentioned. But as we also discussed, that issues are very much marginalized and considered as something that can be ignored. So what do you guys think should be the next step in changing our societal views to make it a big deal and to make it more normal to actually take action against these things?
Thank you. Gharidah.
That's a very important
good
question, and thank you
yes.
for asking that. I'll try to keep it short, try to keep my answer short. देखिए पाकिस्तान में बहुत से laws हैं. हम हमेशा बैठ जाते हैं, हमारे legislators, हमारी organizations, हमारी civil society, हमारी media bodies बैठ जाती हैं कि जी लिखते रहे पेपर, काले करते रहे, फलां, मोटे-मोटे लफ्ज़ जो मेरे कम से कम सर के ऊपर से गुजर जाते हैं अंग्रेज़ी के, मुझे समझ ही नहीं आते कि मेरे rights क्या हैं. आपको इन मोटे-मोटे अंग्रेज़ी के अल्फाज पे मुश्तमिल laws नहीं चाहिए. पाकिस्तान में बहुत laws आ चुके हैं, कंट्रोवर्शियल है, नॉन कंट्रोवर्शियल है, वो अलग डिबेट है. जैसे कि आपने पीका की अभी बात की है, बहुत से लोगों के नज़दीक ये कंट्रोवर्शियल है, लेकिन मेरी जो FIA में 6-7 कंप्लेंट्स पड़ी हुई हैं, दे आर अंडर पीका. वो इसलिए कि मैं समझती हूँ कि आपके पाकिस्तान के जितने भी एग्जिस्टिंग लॉज हैं, आप उनको एक्सरसाइज ज़रूर करें. आप अपना फाइट करने का, अपने आप को प्रोटेक्ट करने का राइट एक्सरसाइज ज़रूर करें. चाहे लॉज कंट्रोवर्शियल हैं, नॉन कंट्रोवर्शियल हैं, वो आप बाद में डिबेट जाके, वो लेजिस्लेशन आपकी वहाँ पर मौजूद है, आपका एक लेजिस्लेचर मौजूद है, वो उसको कर सकता है. पाकिस्तान में लॉज बहुत ज़्यादा है ख़वातीन के प्रोटेक्शन के लिए, फॉर ऑल द मार्जिनलाइज्ड सोसाइटीज़, कम्युनिटीज़, सबके प्रोटेक्शन के लिए, एक्टिविस्ट वगैरह सब चीज़ों के लिए. असल प्रॉब्लम यह है कि उन लॉज पे अमल नहीं होता. लॉज आपके मौजूद हैं, आपके इदारे आज़ाद नहीं हैं, आपके इदारे मजबूत नहीं हैं. लाइक आई सेड कि मेरी 7 से 8 पिटीशंस FIA में पड़ी हुई हैं, वो ले लेते हैं बहुत जल्दी कि ठीक है जी आप आ जाइए पिटीशन देने के लिए. उसके बाद हफ्ता, 2 हफ्ता, मंथ कार्रवाई करते हैं, देन इट गेट्स इनटू द डस्टबिन. उसके बाद कोई कार्रवाई उसके हवाले से नहीं होती. सो ये चीज़ बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है. हमें इस पे प्रेस अपॉन करना है कि जो लॉज फॉर द प्रोटेक्शन ऑफ द वुमेन, फॉर द अदर कम्युनिटीज़, माइनॉरिटीज़, उनके लिए एक्टिविस्ट, मतलब जितने भी लॉज हैं किसी की भी प्रोटेक्शन के लिए एज ए पाकिस्तानी सिटीजन, उस पर अमल ज़रूर होना चाहिए. और आई थिंक एक और आपकी
सोसाइटी के माइंडसेट्स किस तरह बदले जाएं?
ये एक बहुत वाइडर पर्सपेक्टिव का सवाल है. इसके लिए ऑफ कोर्स आपको एजुकेशन सबसे इम्पॉर्टेंट होती है. एंड येस, डिसेंसिटाइजिंग. इस वक्त जो हम जैसे ये सेमिनार्स कर रहे हैं, वायलेंस अगेंस्ट वुमेन, ट्रोलिंग, मैं इसको ट्रोलिंग बार बार प्रेस अपॉन करूंगी, इसको ट्रोलिंग ना कहें, ये ट्रोलिंग नहीं होती. ये वायलेंस है, ये अफेंस है अगेंस्ट वुमेन, अगेंस्ट माइनॉरिटीज़, अगेंस्ट डिफरेंट सोसाइटल ग्रुप्स. सो इसको प्लीज़ ऐसे ही लिया जाए. इसके बारे में जितना एजुकेट करेंगे, जितना एक दूसरे के साथ बात करेंगे, जितना इसको फाइट आउट करेंगे, उतना ज़्यादा ये रिड्यूस होना शुरू हो जाएगी. इट कम्स फ्रॉम द माइंडसेट, इट हैज़ टू बी फॉट विद द माइंडसेट, एंड इट शुड नॉट बिकम द न्यू नॉर्मल. लाइक मुनीज़ा सेड कि यार गालियाँ पड़ती हैं, ठीक है पढ़ने दो यार, कोई फ़र्क नहीं पड़ता. इट शुड नॉट बी लाइक दैट. आपको फ़र्क पड़ना चाहिए, बट इन अ पॉजिटिव वे कि आप उसको फाइट आउट करें, उसके अगेंस्ट अपने शेल में आप बंद ना हो जाएं। हमारी खवातीन क्या करती हैं, वो फौरन शेल में डर के बंद हो जाती हैं, सोशल मीडिया से दूर हो जाती हैं, अपने जर्नलिस्टिक करियर, जैसे मुनीज़े ने कहा, सेल्फ सेंसरशिप स्टार्ट कर देती हैं कि मैं ये लफ्ज़ लिखूंगी तो पता नहीं क्या रिएक्शन आएगा, मैं ये जुमला बोलूंगी तो पता नहीं क्या रिएक्शन आएगा। इस चीज़ से डरना नहीं है आपने, फाइट आउट करें, इदारों के पास जाएं, मुश्किलात आपको फेस करनी पड़ेंगी, बट दैट्स हाउ द नेक्स्ट जनरेशंस वुड बी सेफ एंड सिक्योर।
Thank you. Final question. One last question.
अस्सलाम वालेकुम। थैंक यू मैम, आपने सवाल करने का मौका दिया। तो मैम मेरा सवाल आपसे है कि मैम जो व्यूमेन अपना जर्नलिस्ट हैं हमारी, तो अगर एक व्यूमेन जर्नलिस्ट, जिस तरह मैं आपकी एग्जांपल कोट करना चाहूँगा कि आपने एक पार्टी के नैरेटिव के खिलाफ बात की और फिर आप वो अब्यूजिव लैंग्वेज की बात कर रही थी, तो सोशल मीडिया पर ट्विटर पर एक पीटीआई के ऑफिशियल अकाउंट पर आपको हिट किया गया, जी फॉर गरीदा फरूकी था, वो जी फॉर घटिया, वो आपको ट्विटर पर एक पूरी कैंपेन चलाएगी आपके खिलाफ। तो मैं
ये तो आप बड़ा मुनासिब लफ्ज़ बता रहे हैं जी। आपको पता है कि जी फॉर से क्या आगे वो कैंपेन चलाते रहे हैं।
तो मैम उसके बाद आपको पैमरा का नोटिस आया, तो मैम मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि बजाय इसके कि पैमरा इन जो पॉलिटिकल पार्टीज़ हैं उनको कंट्रोल करे कि आप जो जर्नलिस्ट हैं उनको हिट ना करें, ये वापस जर्नलिस्ट को हिट कर रहे होते हैं। तो पैमरा को कौन सी जो स्ट्रेटजीज अपनानी चाहिए जो व्यूमेंस हमारी जर्नलिस्ट हैं उनको प्रोटेक्ट करने के लिए?
Again, a very important question. लेकिन unfortunately, पैमरा has always been used as a political tool, as a political apparatus. जो भी गवर्नमेंट आए उसके हाथ में वो इस्तेमाल होता रहता है, और सरकारी नौकरी हमारे यहाँ मुल्क में ऐसा ही होता है कि जो भी सरकार है आपने उसको खुश करना है तो ही आपकी नौकरी सस्टेन रह सकती है। अगेन, पैमरा के बहुत से लॉज मौजूद हैं कि आप, एंड रीमा नोज देम एज वेल, हमारी लीगल फ्रेटर्निटी भी उसको जानती है कि पैमरा की भी कुछ बाइंडिंग्स हैं, कुछ रिस्ट्रिक्शंस है कि आप कहाँ पर जाके किस तरह ऑपरेट कर सकते हैं। लेकिन जब पॉलिटिकल गवर्नमेंट्स मैनूवर करती हैं तो फिर आप ज़ाहिर है सरकारी बाबू हैं, आपको नौकरी अपनी बचानी है, तो आप उसमें कुछ ज़्यादा ऑपरेट कर नहीं सकते, तो फिर आप इस तरह के नोटिस वगैरह भेजते रहते हैं जो कि नहीं होना चाहिए। इसको एड्रेस करने के लिए हमारी जर्नलिस्टिक बॉडीज़ मौजूद हैं, ऑर्गेनाइजेशंस मौजूद हैं। मुझे जब नोटिस आया तो मेरी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ने स्टैंड लिया, विच इज़ वेरी रेयर, लेकिन आई मस्ट अप्रिशिएट कि उन्होंने स्टैंड लिया और हमने उस केस को फाइट आउट किया और हमारा वो केस फैसला हमारे हक में आया। इसी तरह से जर्नलिस्टिक बॉडीज़ हैं, सो ये बोथ ऑफ दीज थिंग्स दे गो हैंड इन हैंड।
ठीक है। Thank you so much for your questions. Last comments from each of our speakers. 10-15 seconds में अगर आप please limit रखें। सवाल मेरा ये है, question is our digital witch hunts the new normal? जितना अभी हम protest करें, should we in heart of hearts accept कि this is how it's going to be and we just need to live with it? Naznin, starting from you.
Thank you, Reema. First of all, I want to say that this conference and our participation is not against our country or our government. This is the platform where we share all our bad experiences of which we are faced all over the year. And we should move on and we should protest against this digital crime, you know. Because this is not from our government or not from our country. This is done by the people who are sick and fanatic, political fanatic or religious extremists, something like that. So why should we give access those people? We should stand against them and we should do something strong step against them. Like we should do some campaign on social media, or we should do something where these people can punished by authority or by police or by the government. So we have to raise our voice and talk about this crime, and we should always make our social media free for all. For all journalists, for all women, for all human.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Damith, to you. Is this the new normal? Should we accept it? Learn to live with it?
I think we shouldn't be negative. The time I arrived into activism, when I compare now what is shared in online, there's digital spaces have given opportunities for marginalized communities. So it's not the same shit I am hearing the 10 years back. Now I see a lot of progress has been made. The other thing is, social media is not a new world or something. It's a depiction of our own societies. So society has to change, and the social media spaces also will change.
Absolutely.
So in this, at the same time, it is a lot of negative and a lot of harassments, a lot of cyber violence. At the same time, the opportunity it has given to people to speak out, not to be forgotten.
Yes.
So earlier it was mainstream media, institutionalized voices that were there, that could easily politically and using the wealth that can be manipulated, and now not anymore. So we have to deal with these issues and continue the fight. So I am sure after 10 years, we will have new problems, but not the same problems. We will progress. That's I am.
Thank you. Ahmed, same question to you.
Yes, so I do not believe that this should be the new normal. I think no one should be made to feel unsafe in any platform, whether it's online or whether it's a physical space. I feel that there should always be that sort of freedom, that sort of safety, feeling of safety when you're expressing yourself. And so I think we need to fight, we need to stand together, we need to share experiences, we need to make the digital online space and the physical space safer for those promoting human rights particularly. And I just want to end by saying, like, we've been asking who's the churail, who's the in all this, and I think apart from those trolls who commit these acts, who promote violence and hatred, it's also those people standing on the sidelines not saying anything. I think it's the apathy that's the real churail. I think it's those people who are sharing those posts promoting violence. I think it's those people who are creating a digital space so filled with violence and so filled with hate that it is actually becoming the same thing on the physical space. I think those people who are not saying anything, who are cheering them from the sidelines, who are creating that apathy, are also part of that group of people who are promoting this type of violence and hate online and also on the physical space.
Yeah.
And
Thank you so
for
much.
this
Very
opportunity.
important point. Munizae, Gharidah, last comments from the two of you. Is this the new normal? 30 seconds. Yes.
Okay, fine. It is unfortunately becoming a new normal, but it should not become a new normal. So to simplify it, deal it with like you are dealing with COVID. It is there, but you are taking precautions, you are fighting it out also. And one thing I would definitely want to please highlight, this discussion has not all been about being patriotic or unpatriotic. Anyone voicing the concerns, voicing the difficulties being faced by them is not about being unpatriotic, just like Naznin said. So it's just voicing your concerns, telling about your difficulties and all.
Yes.
I think silence is no longer an option. I think firstly and foremost, we need to recognize that there is a problem. Till we do not recognize that problem, we cannot address it. And I do think in cases which are severe, like in the case of Gharidah and Nidhi, there should have been a complaint. Because once you hold people accountable, then that is a good way to make sure that they won't do it again. I think number one is that. And number two, I think that women's rights do not exist in isolation.
Yeah.
It is part of a larger democratic movement. And no longer when you go forward, it's not the state that is supreme, it is the people in that state that are supreme. And if these people have no rights and they have no protection in the law, then what is the point of having the state? The state has to protect its people. We are not going to protect the state. The state is a powerful entity, but people, the most vulnerable of us, when they are protected, that is when we can say that's a good state. And we are hoping to build that.
Thank you, Gharidah. Thank you, Munizae. Thank you, Ahmed, Damith, Naznin, for being here and for sharing your, for you, Naznin, your trauma with us. We've all learnt a lot, and I hope as South Asia, as the region, we can move forward. आप में से जिन लोगों को लगता है ख़वातीन एग्जैजरेट करती हैं, झूठ बोलती हैं, ऐसा कुछ ख़ास होता नहीं है ऑनलाइन, उनकी टाइमलाइंस पे ज़रूर जाइए. उनके ख़िलाफ़ जो ट्रेंड्स बनते हैं उनमें ट्वीट ज़रूर देखिए, क्योंकि मैंने जब वो देखी मेरा इसके ऊपर जो एक ओपिनियन था वो बहुत उसमें चेंज आया, बिकॉज इट रियली इज़, एज गरीदा अर्लियर सेड, वायलेंस, and these are not just trolling, it's not just trolling, it's actually hate crimes, it's incitement to violence, and no one should consider them to be normal or something कि बस कोई बात नहीं आप accept कर ले. तो अगर आप में से किसी को है शक, ज़रूर timelines आज जाके देखिए, शायद वो शक जो है वो दूर हो जाएगा. Thank you for being a great audience, for your questions.